morning. Feels like I should say happy Friday. It's just a Tuesday, but everybody's awake. First session of the morning, drink some coffee. So as Mike said, hope everybody had a chance to vote absentee ballot or you're going to make it back to your polling place today. I thought this was a relevant image. The flag is from our sailing excursion on Sunday. So thank you, Mike and the team, for putting that together because the weather was great. You know, the flag's flying. I made sure I got this picture right when it was blowing, and then of course right after that the wind died and we sat like a cork for 30 minutes and just bobbed. So perfect timing. All right. So I'm an architect by trade. I've kind of come through the ranks of DaVita over the last 4 years as project manager, design manager, and now director of design and construction. Today I'm going to wear the design manager hat from the previous couple of years on the kidney care side. So we do a lot more than that. I'm really not going to go into that today because I feel like the relevance for this work, I told Mike I wanted to present last year, but I wanted to have the data. I wanted to see how the design that we put out there performed first. So now we have that data. The timing is great. Raise your hand if you know much about DaVita. Before I came to this conference, had you heard of DaVita? Did you know what we do? Okay, a few people. So dialysis is hopefully something you won't have to partake in or see, but there's a lot of our facilities. As Mike said, we have 2,318 dialysis centers across the states. 186,000 patients, and now we have about 140 internationally. By the time at the end of this calendar year, that number could easily be 2,400, 2,500. We literally build almost something every day. So that's a really massive portfolio to manage. It's a lot different than a lot of the health systems that are here, of course. We're really ranked highly in 5-star ratings. I heard people talking about that over the last few days and being able to research that. It's actually something you can find out about us. We have a lot of competitors, but we are the leader. And then as I go through the presentation, that's our corporate headquarters building in Denver. It's a LEED Platinum building. We're building a second tower right now that's going to be LEED and WELL certified. But I want to talk about our language. So DaVita means he or she gives life in Italian. We have a mayor, not a CEO. I'm a teammate of DaVita, not an employee. We have a village, not a company. We're all citizens of our village. And my team is Team Genesis. So it's center development, design, construction, real estate, facilities maintenance, licensure and certification, and peer credentialing and physician review. So that's the lingo that you may see scattered throughout this presentation. Just want to kind of level set on that first. A little bit of history of dialysis, just so you guys can find out sort of how long this has been going on. But the first outpatient center was in 1962. So the ESRD Act allowed us to be sort of prevalent in the industry through CMS with the funding that allows us to do what we do to save people's lives. Back then, if you did not have an artificial kidney or the ability to get on a dialyzer, or you could get a transplant, you basically just died. They had to sort of pick and choose. So now the industry has caught up with the need, and unfortunately, it's a growing trend. So I want to segue into prototype design. We've had a lot of discussion in the last couple of days about leveraging standards, innovation, continuous improvement, and prototypical design. This is what we do all day long. If we didn't, with a portfolio that large, we'd have just a random scattering of designs. So we partnered with our operations team and all these cross-functional teams that you see here for about 12 months from 2014 and 2013 up and through the beginning of 2015. And these teams that you see, in DaVita, if you're not a team unless you have a logo, so you have to create a logo. And that's not a hard and fast rule, but you get recognized pretty quickly if you can do a hyperlink and have a logo. So everybody has a logo. This is probably a third of the logos that we have. And there's some scattered partners in there as well for vendors such as architects, contractors, engineers. We really like to have their input as well because they're the ones that are going to be designing, doing the construction documents, and building them. And then the maintenance group is part of our team, but we do also outsource, much like I think someone from Cleveland Clinic said they use CBRE. We do outsource a lot of facilities through them. Our core values are on the right, and the 7 of those core values were voted on by our teammates when we went from total renal care to DaVita back in early 2000. The one I want to highlight today is continuous improvement. There was a talk done, I think last year, by Chris McCarthy from Kaiser, and he talked about innovation versus improvement. And so innovation takes you from the worst case to the worst best case, and then improvement takes you from that worst best case to the best case. We do a lot of both. I know Brian yesterday from HCA talked about disruptive innovation and other types of innovation. You're going to see a lot of different examples today because we feel like improvement could be an improvement on a previous innovation that we did, whether it's inside of our group, outside of our group compared to our competitors, or just improving upon ideas all the time. So we are continually improving every single day on what we do. So we had some previous prototypes. They have really sexy names like Alamo and Heritage. Alamo was literally when we had a prototype meeting in San Antonio, Texas. So they thought it was brilliant to name it the Alamo. Now we remember the Alamo, literally, because it's old. Heritage was on a street in Tennessee, and they just named it after Heritage Street. So these two prototypes, without going into the minutia of how they got laid out, they got better upon what we did over time. Interestingly enough, they're on a 3-year cycle. So we started to think about aligning with IBC, IECC, building codes, ASHRAE. When those cycles came up, how do we continue to improve right before the codes? So our HOPE prototype launched in October 2014, and it is really a serve and serve model. So the Boquan metaphor in the hand over fist allows you on this relationship to have the served area a nice square and have access points through to the public spaces and back to the back of house spaces to keep the treatment floor, is what we call it, in one area. Taking it a step farther, we actually break it into sections: teammate, utility, patient, and public. So we can actually zone these off. In some cases, we are considered ambulatory care by the code, so it really changes the way we have to think about the treatment floor. We also got really tired of the institutional look and feel. We wanted to make it more warm and inviting and patient-centric. This is before CAP scores and the other things that were, advising the way we get reimbursement. But we changed our waiting room to be welcome. We created this area called the Avenue, which is the flow from a patient access. Keep in mind that if you don't know much about dialysis, patients come in 3 days a week for 3 to 4 hours at a time. They sit in a chair. The 3 biggest patient influencers for them are the thermal comfort. Are they cold? Because they're sedentary, and our patient care technicians are moving around in lab coats. They're hot, so they're walking around, and patients are sitting there with the blood lines and everything. So they're cold. The second most important thing is their TV and what's on it. And then the third most important thing is their chair. How comfortable is their chair? So what can we do to influence that and to make them at home? Well, previous centers on the other images I showed had the backs. So this DaVita logo is the window. So your back is to the window all day. You don't know what's going on behind you. Your body heat's radiating to the glass. It's actually moving out. Why don't we turn the patients and allow them a view out or have them face the window? There's been studies that show that seeing nature, seeing light, seeing movement can heal you, can help you. So we really took that into consideration. It also helped a lot working with our vendors to pull the HVAC zones into separated areas, blow air at the wall where the thermal exchange is occurring, and then really diffuse lightly over top of the patients so that the air is not blowing on them, they're not cold. And the PCT stations are where they need to be for them to be influenced by the air. So it really works well from a thermal comfort perspective, from a daylight perspective. On this particular diagram, the sun would move around the building on the south facade and bring in natural daylight. Daylight harvesting sensors would pick that up. We use LED lights, solar shades, and light shelves, so it bounces all that light into a space. And then on top of that, we've actually minimized the loop piping run from our RO room. So dialysis is a very water-centric endeavor. It's 7,000 gallons a day per clinic. So we use a ton of water, and we discharge that water. When we move that water through here, how can we do that efficiently? And one of the ways to do it was this layout. And the other few heartbeats that we want to look at are we're calling this the living room because we give life. The RO bicarb is the works, and the refresh room is in the back here for teammates. People talk a lot about patient experience, and sometimes we forget to talk about teammate experience or employee experience. You want retention, you want your best and brightest people to stay. So we also think about it as a kit of parts. How do we take this and add on to it? How do we push and pull? Imagine a SketchUp model, any architects in the room, and we can push and pull pieces of it and add on to it. That lingo, that lexicon of parts can be very advantageous for us if we want to grow and add additional stations. There's also non-compliant items such as adding in a clinical coordinator that are not part of our standard regimen, and where do you drop those in? So we have a metric for this. The whole idea is to have a playbook for our myriad of architecture and engineering firms across the country, so if we bring in a new talent to do work for us, they have something to go for. This book is about 194 pages. It's called our HOPE Design Guide. So instead of giving a set of technical drawings, we want them to understand how do we think, how do we work, how do we want to treat our patients. And then we break it into zones as well. The bottom left corner over here is if we were going to add a PD or HHD home modality. So if we wanted to add a training center where you can go and home dialyze, we would put it on this side of the building. When we're talking about standardization, one of the biggest things, and this probably applies to all the vendors in the room, I have a few here actually that we work with on a national basis. How do you standardize? How do you keep on track? How do you get built quickly and sustainably and continue to progress in the industry? The other thing that's really big is, having been a former board member of the USGBC, I have firsthand experience with market transformation and being able to think about processes and improvements that actually can transform the vendor market itself. How do you have a product that maybe has phthalates or PVC in it and you want to get rid of that product? You work with the vendors and you find a way to create that product. So we've done a lot of that recently and had some good success. To protect the innocent, I took all the names in the blank space of all the vendors off, so no one can pick on them. But we have about 22 vendors that actually handle built materials for us. And then there are a few others that just do things like utility rebates and incentives or testing. The top image on the left is our prototype design at our village-wide DaVita meeting in 2014, and the bottom left corner is what it looked like when we built it. So kind of wanted to have a success story of the prototype and the national programs and how they roll out, because they're integral to what we do and our success. And just want to also give a shout out to Mike and the team with here at Influence Group. I've met a lot of the vendors that we worked with through the one-on-ones here, so it's been pretty successful. So the main things that we talk about on our team are speed to market, getting our dialysis centers built in markets for de novo white space or a relocation clinic to serve those patients. In some markets, dialysis is hard to find, so if you don't get to it, you can't get served. Better comfort and sustainability is the sustainability metric and environment, and then standardizing through the national programs. I'm going to show some shell building prototype examples. Somebody asked me the other day how many clinics we had and how many did we build, and you saw the numbers. I'd say about 20 to 25% of those are shell buildings. So if we can't find a site, the real estate doesn't work, like the Walgreens person said, you want to be in the corner of Main and Main. We don't always get that. So if we can't find a strip center or an inline retail, we will build a shell building. How do we do that? We have a whole book of design standards for that as well, because we want to have a standard look and feel from the signage perspective, from the market, from the brand, but also the process. We do get tractor trailer deliveries on our projects, so we have to accommodate a really large truck as well. Light shelf criteria, solar shading, really want the building to be oriented correctly. Sometimes it's street frontage, sometimes it's solar gain. Really looked at those kind of things in our prototype. This is an evolution of a freestanding kit of parts canopy that we used to make out of steel, and now we actually kind of prefab it. And then what does that look like if it grows to a drive-under canopy? So these are some renderings that we did to make that kind of happen. And then here's some real-world examples. This is a combination of pictures from a clinic in Houston, Texas called Vintage, and then some from Kansas City. These are from the Texas site, and that's the one in Kansas City. So as you can see, we're pretty consistent with the look and feel when we can do that. We do run against some jurisdictional reviews where we can't use every material we want, but this is all built on our program, very durable, very sustainable, easy to maintain. And then we also have a separate book that's the larger 191-page book for our TI prototype. I'm hitting the 5-minute warning, so I'm going to go a little faster. This is our previous prototype design. It's a combination of Alamo, and that is super weird that happened. There were more pictures than that, but Heritage is shown on the bottom right and Alamo is in the top left. A lot of different color schemes. What we found that giving operations and the team too many options really watered down the prototype. It watered down the brand. So we actually condensed to one solid look and feel. And what does that mean? So we want to be greener and more sustainable. We want to be more efficient and more durable. So we want to have less maintenance. If we put in LED lights that last 11.2 years on average, you're not going to change a light bulb in the entire first 10 years of the lease. You're going to have no wax floors. You're not going to be waxing the floors. You're going to have a lot less maintenance. So it doesn't become a first cost discussion only. It's really more of an ROI and a life cycle cost. Process improvement and lean. I've heard a lot about that lately. We actually do a lot of that work through our peak team. We do a lot of different diagrams thinking about the flow, but not just the constructability, but really how many steps does it take for a PCT to get to a clean sink or to a dirty sink or to go over to their dialyzer rack and bring the supplies to their one of 4 patients that they're working with. So we really analyzed the heck out of that to make sure we were doing the right thing in terms of our design and our layout. This is called the neighborhood layout. So it really works well in the flow perspective from a lean process improvement. We looked at ratios of sight lines and visibility that are very critical for our CMS regulates our facilities, so they actually look at these sight lines to make sure we have them. And then there's our triangle, almost like your kitchen, sink, stove, refrigerator triangle. You have to have that triangle every time. So we constantly, in our preliminary floor plans, make sure we have that when we review our designs. We've done things like cardboard mock-ups, which I find to be fascinating, especially when we can take things that are sort of Velcro together and move them around and see where the best place for them to go. Spaghetti diagrams, all your typical peak and lean tools that you would use. Looked a lot at color psychology. Our previous prototype had colors that were more corporate office colors, and they weren't contrasting well against blood or invigorating teammates or really relaxing patients or encouraging social interaction. So when we do that in a clinic, this is what it looks like. And this is our treatment floor. Not as banal, not as institutional, much more homey, kind of goes with the living room motif. Very easy to maintain, lots of natural light. We actually reduced our lights by 33% by going to LED direct indirect. So we took out all that extra whips, conduit, labor, and materials. And that's the avenue that as you come in, before you sort of turn your mind on, I'm going to sit down for 3.5 hours in a dialysis chair, this is sort of what you feel. And we wanted an area that was sort of an interstitial space that you could walk through and kind of get your game face on before you had to go dialyze. So it gave patients a little privacy and a little bit of care and dignity before they came in for the next 4 hours in this room. This is the lounge. It's meant to be loud and bright. It's meant to encourage you to talk to your fellow teammates. So orange is a color that does that. Orange and yellow are really good at that. Everything's Energy Star, everything's water compliant, very durable materials, but the teammates love this space. This is where they get to go and kind of decompress for a few minutes and have lunch and be themselves. Talk about the innovation process, and I got 1 minute and 26 seconds, so this is going to be super fast. So we have a form that we use called the IDEA form. The IDC is a committee that we use. We actually continually innovate, so we have these calls once a month, and we get a tremendous amount of callers, and I think we had 76 people on the last call from all over the country, and we're starting to bring in international teammates and others to really innovate, and we encourage them to throw any idea out there. They just have to fill out this form, and then we'll back it up with a deck. We go pilot to program, so I know that some others may think that pilot programs aren't the best way to work. They work well for us. We will pilot it in one clinic and see how it goes. We will look at the ROI, we'll look at the cost. If we have a smaller project and we want to roll it out to 10 clinics, we'll pilot it in 10, then we'll do a whole region, then we'll launch it nationally. If you make $1,000 savings and we do 300 clinics, it's $300,000 you just saved. It works really nicely at the scale that we're at. One of the success stories I want to go through in the next 30 seconds is the regional wall. We have materials that are locally sourced. We used to do a stone wall. Now we actually pick something in the region. So there's Albuquerque with the balloons, Pennsylvania with reclaimed wood, Rockville, Maryland stone, petroglyphs on concrete in Nevada, brick in Texas, and then some reclaimed barnwood in Oklahoma. We had a tree that was struck by lightning on the site, and we planed it down and put it on the wall. So it really brings a sense of community into place in each clinic. What's been innovative? So Hope is innovative. This is some propaganda that we have internally, but I just wanted to share. We're at 142 clinics and counting, really starting to be on the cutting edge and moving forward from where we were before. We did a gigacrete project in Las Vegas, Nevada that's R50 walls, extremely energy efficient, and really getting feedback from our patients about sustainability and what they want to see in clinics. We're actually doing it. What is next? So dirt. I'm sure a lot of people here have used dirt, like dirt. We actually tested it. This is one of our home training center module exam rooms. We're starting to plug and play and really think about digital fabrication. How can we use companies like dirt? Another example is blocks. I've heard about them as recently as last week. Threw it out to the IDC committee. We're going to look into it and see if we can do modular exam rooms and how do we put those in either in dialysis or home care or even some of our larger facilities like multi-specialty. IoT, we all talked about that. We actually are rolling it out. We're doing lighting control and BMS monitoring. We're doing pressure sensors for the negative pressure that's in the differential pressure in the bicarbonate acid room. And we're doing leak detection in our water chases. We also monitor our med fridges through IoT, and we plug them into the grid so we can see if the temperature overnight drops in a refrigerator and we lose a particular medicine. We work with our Village Green team on an environmental sustainability. We achieved 7 of our 8 goals for 2015, so we ramped them up. We crushed our water use, and so we're really trying to go even further and be more socially aware and environmentally conscious about that. And we're actually creating our own rating system because while WELL and LEED and Energy Star and other systems, even the International Green Construction Code work for us, we need to tailor them to our needs. And so we're really borrowing from a lot of rating systems to create our own Village Green certification for our existing centers, our neighborhood offices, and our clinics. And then I'll leave you with this. So this is a board I created. I was inspired by going through airports and seeing kiosks and movable displays. We do a lot of conferences, not trade conferences to get people to come to our clinics, but we kind of educate our own teams. So we have a thing called Village Wide, where all of our facility administrators come together once a year in DC, and they meet and educate and talk about clinical awareness. And then we have Physician Leadership Meeting, PLM, and then Academy, where we bring in new teammates. So I thought, what a better space to have something like this to explain what our prototype is. And it's actually on magnets, so I can pull these off and change them over time. And then one side is Village Green, the other side is Team Genesis, my team. And we have a comment box, and people drop in comments. Hey, I wish we had this. I wish we had a place to hang our visors. I wish our PPE coats were higher. I wish we had more snack options in the clinics. And so we take those and we continually improve on a day-to-day basis and educate internally to make that happen. So I went over time. I apologize, Michael, but I think we're not doing questions now, but thank you all very much for listening and staying awake.
Excellent.